Debt Free Degree Patreon beloveds. I am so excited to be here with Joe and Erika. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in just a minute, but I just want each one of you to know that when I encounter experts, what I do is I say, oh my gosh, my community needs to know about you. And the first meeting I had with Joe and Erika, it was so amazing. And probably we could have talked for 3 hours because their perspective is so in alignment with my perspective in terms of specifically a debt-free degree. And so what I said to them was, I'm in Georgia. I know y'all are in this other state. It probably wouldn't, necessarily work out. And they said, oh, we can work with students all over the country. And I said, oh, could I please interview you? So what I want you to know is that I've got a list of questions I'm going to ask them that have been pre-approved by their company office. And I am just going to let them kind of roll with it in terms of this interview. We are delighted that you have joined us. So with that, Joe and Erika, why don't y'all introduce yourselves?
Yeah, thank you so much, DrRoz, and it's a pleasure to be here. I think you summed up the last conversation we had was just very platonic in the excitement of what we each do for our backgrounds, our professions, and how we can help the communities. And to your point, as soon as we realized we're not just stuck in Wisconsin or Illinois, we're like, great, let's have this conversation today that if we can reach out and impact your community and your followers, that's why we're here today, and we're excited.
Excellent. Erika, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I have been in finance for a little over 6 years at this point. I was first starting out with Northwestern Mutual as a college financial representative, went full-time as a financial advisor, and then actually at the beginning of this year decided to join Joe's team. So it's been amazing, just being able to kind of team up in that way. So
love it. Well, I am so intrigued by all of these questions, and community, we may or may not get through all of these, but we'll see. But the first one that immediately jumps out to me that I really want to know the answer to for myself, so this is one of those things where I'm going to ask and I have no idea what they're going to say, is Joe and Erika, what financial tips are there that no one knows that are legal?
Sure. And I realized, DrRoz, I didn't get a chance there a second ago. The background that I have as well is a wealth management advisor with Northwestern Mutual. Practice is based here out of Milwaukee, but we have licensing and clients in over 20 different states. And so I failed to mention that. And that background that brought me into this is actually tied to your audience. My grandmother had started a policy for me with Northwestern when I was 8 years old. As a teenager, she was showing me statements of how this thing worked: interest, dividends, compounding. And by my 20s, after school, I was kind of off on my own financial independence, but it was thanks to that journey that grandma had started. So anyways, but to the point that you just asked the question there, I think the thing that maybe kind of Eric and I can share is that people aren't aware that how a Roth IRA can work, or Roth dollars works. The government will tax you on the income you earn, right? So anytime you earn income, they'll throw their state tax or federal tax on there. But a Roth IRA is a savings vehicle, a savings tool that you've already paid tax on your money, but all the growth of that account is now tax-free the rest of your life. Wow. So ideally for our younger clients, they can set up Roth, pay tax when their income and their taxes are really low, get it into that account, and as it grows throughout their lifetime, they never have to worry about when they take it out in the future if they're in a higher tax bracket. So that's one of the ones that everybody's like, wait, is that legal? Are there limits on that? Or, and so there can be income limits and contribution pieces tied to that. But I think Roth is the one that sticks out. Erika, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that overall, and I laughed when that was one that had come up, just as like, what is legal, what's not. A lot of what Joe and I do, it's just optimizing dollars more than, actually trying to figure out loopholes. So another thing that I have just seen within my own community, well, I guess my own clientele as well, is just helping people understand that you can actually have life insurance on children. Joe explain a little bit more around that as well, but a lot of times it is saying, hey, I'm sitting down with client A and client B, and I say, hey, have you thought about having life insurance on your kids? And they don't understand the concept up until we really kind of delve into that. And they, you know, a lot of times that is a pretty attractive piece just because you can set your kids up pretty well.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Before I move on, do you want to share anything more about that, Joe, or?
Yeah, sure. So, and it kind of ties to the original questions. What are things people are surprised about? Our main goal is to meet somebody where they're at and understand their income, their situation, their savings opportunities, and then almost go from most efficient place for them to save into the least efficient place. And sometimes the most efficient buckets are things they've never heard of, like Roth, like permanent life insurance. You know, 401ks are fairly standard, I think, nowadays. But a lot of times, even how 529s, as you talk about college education, you know, there's different buckets, as we call them, that a lot of people just aren't aware how they work until we have a conversation with them.
Yes.
And permanent insurance, the quick answer there, Dr. Roz, is there's really two main types of life insurance: term insurance and permanent insurance, or whole life. Term is just basically a pure death benefit, pure what if. It's great for young families because in the event of a what if, term insurance can fit every budget. Permanent insurance, though, takes the death benefit aspect, makes it permanent throughout a person's lifetime as opposed to a term of time, and then also adds a savings component tied to it. And so that savings, we call it a living benefit. The savings can be used throughout a person's lifetime before waiting for the eventual death. So a permanent policy can be savings and insurance kind of tied together.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, that's a new term to me because I would have known the other term. What did you say? Full life? But not
whole life.
permanent.
Whole life.
Whole life.
Permanent.
Whole life.
Yep.
So I would have heard of that, but not necessarily permanent. So I absolutely love that. I love too, Erika, that you said your perspective, you all's perspective, like your philosophy is all about optimizing dollars and not finding loopholes. And for me, that again is in alignment, because to me, optimizing dollars, that's from a place of abundance. That's from a place of saying there's plenty out there. Let's make sure that we maximize it. So one of the things I talk about with the Patreon community is OPM, which is other people's money. How are we going to maximize that? And so what I find is helping people who are putting a lot of energy into finding the loophole, that is oftentimes a losing battle, you know, and so that maximizing piece, I love it. So what are the best ways that you all would say are out there for saving? So you can put it in whatever terms you want to: saving for education, saving for retirement, saving for, you know, your grandchild. What does that look like? What are the best ways to do that? I think you've touched on it, but I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
All right. A little bit of background noise there too. So what we really do, Dr. Roz, and Erika had highlighted this on some of the pieces we put together for today's conversation, is we really always want to take care of the person themselves first and their own financial stability before ever allocating out resources to those around them. So that may actually include children. There's an analogy that I think kind of aligns with the conversation in your community. Now, ideally, you would not like to take a loan out. You would love to use other people's money. But the phrase that we use is you can take a loan for education, but you can't take a loan for retirement.
Yes.
And we need to be able to be financially sound ourselves before we start allocating our resources, whether it's kids or other family members.
Yes.
So Erika and I really preach going through a budget, understanding what comes in through the front door. What are the current expenses going out? Are there areas of opportunity for cost savings? Maybe it's looking around and repricing home and auto insurance. Maybe it's looking around and just a second set of eyes on the budget to say, hey, do you really need that extra cup of coffee every month or every week? And so that then kind of gets us to, if there is a surplus, we put that surplus into a timeline. And we call that the savings timeline. And short-term savings would be cash on hand, CDs. Right now, high-yield savings accounts are becoming more popular. Short-term money is usually, though, emergency fund, upcoming purchases, expenses. Maybe it's that down payment for the upcoming house, for example. But short-term isn't the most efficient from a tax perspective or from a growth perspective.
Right.
So then once you get past short term, you move more into middle term. And we would say 3+ years until you reach about age 59 and a half. And 59 and a half is important because that's when you can technically touch your retirement accounts without taxes or penalties. So middle term accounts, though, might be the equity inside of life insurance, inside of a permanent insurance policy. Maybe it's the equity inside of real estate. And some of those come up with funding education, for example. But then also long-term accounts would be your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth versions of those accounts, maybe annuities, pensions. And so when we look at those different buckets, short, middle, long-term, we really have to understand from the client, if they have extra money, the short-term goals are the nearest, right? We need to save first. But if we have that overflow or abundance, then you can start waterfalling into those other buckets. And again, we need to know how somebody's tracking for their goals before we can start to say, hey, now we need to add in new goals. And even today, I'm working with a client who unfortunately has ended up in some debt. And their situation isn't really about saving and investing for the future, but what's the strategy for paying down that debt right now?
Yes.
And they have multiple kids, and your OPM, other people's money, is a huge area because they don't have the resources right now to help fund their kids' college. But to be able to get them into and find those avenues that can help them find other sources of money for their college, like that's where there's kind of fun alignment. But in this case, we're focusing their extra dollars towards paying down debt, right?
Right. And that debt, for a lot of people is perhaps not necessarily your clientele, but for a lot of people, they are under student loan debt. And so they can't save for their children's education because the extra money that they would have to put there, they're putting towards their own loans,
100%.
Yeah. So all of that is that interconnected piece. And again, you all's perspective of meeting people where they are. And, it's the whole Stephen Covey thing. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how are we going to get there? Begin with the end in mind.
Exactly.
And,
100%. That's exactly it.
Yes. The other thing I love about y'all is how cohesive you and Erika are, because it's evident that when you work closely together and you're aligned, then it's that exponential effect of saying you've got a lot of experts on this team who are all in alignment, really rooting for you to do the absolute best you can do. And so that's what's so exciting. I think about being with the two of you particularly is that synergy. So what is, I would say, one thing that folks should be doing that can help them advance financially?
Really quick, DrRoz, I do want to go back just 1 second to your comment. Erika and I have to give a shout out to Ryan, who's on our team, Corey, who's on our team, Brittany, who's on our team. And candidly, the Northwestern Mutual system, if you will, the company's been around 165 plus years. They do an amazing job training their field force, including us. They put us in touch with amazing speakers, great conferences. Like Eric and I are just a small portion of that overall system, but we are truly blessed to be in the system that we are. And that synergy and energy you see is actually a pretty contagious part of our Northwestern Mutual networks, if you will.
Love it. Oh, that's so kind. That's so kind. See, this is why y'all need to be reaching out to them. I mean, how amazing is that? Thank you.
But you might need to restate your question. I just had to give a shout out though to the other part of the team that wasn't here.
No. I'm so glad. And I think it's important to call people by name. I think it's even the person that introduced us is Jamie Shibley, and she and I got to meet each other in person last night before I'm recording this. And one of the things we were talking about is the importance of seeing people, the importance of letting someone know that you matter. And so just you, Joe, taking that time to name the other people on your team, I mean, that lets them know. And that's something that I know that you do every single day, because if you're going to do it in the midst of an interview, then you're going to make sure that they're seen every day. And that's also so beautiful. So I'm curious, what is the one thing that you would say that people can be doing right now to help them advance financially? So whether it's, again, those goals, like you're saying, meet where they are. And so for the Debt-Free Degree community or for your community, what's your suggestion?
I'll let Erika go first and then I'll follow my own.
candidly, it's just sitting down with somebody who can actually help you align your goals with, you know, what's actually going on, and take a look and say, hey, this is some things that we identified that are opportunities for you to be either saving more or paying debt down faster, or, you know, investing, whatever have you, versus, you know, just going at it alone. Because a lot of times what Joe and I have seen over and over and over again is people will try and do it themselves, and they'll get overwhelmed, and then they'll just sit back and they'll say, you know what, I'm not making any decisions. I know what this is. I think I've got enough going on with my 401k, but then they sit down with us, you know, whenever that time period is right for us to be reaching out to them, and they're going, holy cow, I have to save how much more in order to retire by what age? Like, it depends on the person. But the biggest thing that we tell people is, you know, if you have any sort of questions on this, absolutely reach out, because it's what we do. And I mean, people aren't going to go home after their 9 to 5 and be like, tonight I'm going to finish or figure out my retirement planning. It's just not going to happen. It just really doesn't. So that's the big thing that we look at, both on the investment side and the just generalized planning. So.
And where I'd echo with that, spot on, is at least know where you're at. And if you don't, raise your hand to ask for help. And that's where having a financial professional in your corner can ask you questions you maybe hadn't thought about, can help provide scope. The byproduct of our conversations, DrRoz, is relief. You see the weight coming off of people's shoulders when they know what their direction is. But something that even if they don't meet with a professional, the one thing I'd suggest somebody does is run their own budget. How much is coming in? How much is going out? Are you getting ahead? Are you treading water? Or are you in a deficit? And that one thing can be done even without us. But having a financial professional to help guide you through those answers and then know where to go from there, that's, I think, where we definitely come in handy.
So what would you say are the biggest challenges that families and businesses are facing right now?
Yeah, Eric and I talked about this one actually on Monday as we were getting ready for our meeting with you. And
Oh, good.
I'm going to go with the curmudgeon-y. Now I'm 41, married with a couple of kids. And I am a very on the older end of millennial scale. But to me, the immediate gratification society that we have nowadays, it's fantastic, I think, for interaction and community building and so many different things. But when you see somebody carrying around the latest cell phone, or, you know, your neighbor's got a new car in the driveway, there's so many pressures that we have to be keeping up with the Joneses. That's always been around, but how quickly you can see what the Joneses have is faster than ever. And so I think it's really hard that, you know, Eric and I work in a deferred gratification industry. We don't get thank yous right away necessarily today, but when we usher our clients across the retirement threshold, when their kids are graduating college, like those are when we see that our mission is fulfilled. But we preach deferred gratification, and that's kind of hard to do in today's society in some ways.
You know, I have never, so I think I sort of introduced to y'all that my concept, which it's not mine, it's somebody else's concept of OPM, but I am now going to credit Joe and Erika with the delayed gratification system, because that's exactly what a debt-free degree is. That's exactly what it is. It is so easy to walk into financial aid and accept those loan papers and sign it away and get that money. And, oh, I've got an overage. Well, I can use that to buy a car, or I can use that to go to a party, or I can use that to buy, you know, 18 more shirts that, you know, they're only 7 days in a week. And, you know, how many shirts do you actually need? You know, and that is so critical, that mindset. And you're exactly right with social media. Not only is it immediate that we can keep up with the Joneses, but it used to be the Joneses were only the people that we could see. So they were the Joneses to the left and the Joneses to the right. And now it is, oh, here's 8 billion global Joneses that we're trying to keep up with. And that delayed gratification system, that is so powerful. Really, really powerful.
And it's harder than ever now with the, you know, younger generations coming up. And so I think that's where you, DrRoz, and your mission, your goal, your community, one of the pages we talk about is starting the saving early and the power of compounding. But if you can talk to somebody before they even have their debt, before they go off to school, before they even have their career and their income, in order to get some of those habits started, It's a compounding effect.
Yes.
There's a great book out there, and I'm going to blank on the author, but The Psychology of Money.
Mm,
And he talks about how Warren Buffett really actually isn't all that special. It's just Warren Buffett started early,
really
really
early.
early as a teenager. And, he just was doing things already that a lot of other people don't start until their 20s and 30s.
And talk about keeping up with the Joneses. My understanding is that he still lives in the house that he's been in for decades. Right. And so that's another way, it's like this house has a roof and it's safe and it's wonderful. We're good here, in that mindset. That's beautiful. Erika, can you kind of give it from your perspective, this delayed gratification piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing with my clientele is they don't know where to start, so they don't. And again, it's the delayed gratification of, saying, hey, if I have to cut back my lifestyle a little bit now in order to have what I want later. Joe said it perfectly, but a lot of times it's not necessarily an income problem. It's more of a spending problem. So being able to say, hey, how can I maybe do a couple different things, just to make sure that I am where I want to be in 10 years. We're not doing, planning for Erika and, today we're doing planning for Erika 10 or 15 or 20 years out from now. So being able to sit back and actually embrace it, like it truly is hard to actually start. But if you can start just even somewhere, it's better than not doing anything. It's, as simple as, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of an auto save. I'm not even going to see it on my bank account because it's going to go into a high yield savings account. Again, shout out to those. They're a lot hotter right now than I think they ever were before. But if it's just an auto transfer, you're going to get used to not having that money in your bank account for spending. And it has to be something. I would say probably 85 to 90% of what Joe and I do is actually just accountability. It's accountability and being able to help people find out what they should be doing and making that more efficient. But truly, it is just starting. So
yeah.
Personal trainers for our clients' financial health. That was always one that resonated.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, being significantly older than you, Joe, not on the upper scale of millennial, but in that other generation, the fact that you called yourself millennial and curmudgeonly, I was like, no. So you're not giving off a curmudgeon vibe at all. And so I think that needs to be dropped from your vernacular. You could be, I'm the cool hip dad that's a millennial dad. That
aspect of seeing in your 40s versus your 30s and your 20s, the things that kind of irk you. There's just a few more of them that have irked me. And anyways, yeah.
Yes, there's a little bit more wisdom there, but yeah, no, Joe is one of the most optimistic people I know. Yeah, wisdom is there, curmudgeony is not.
Yes, exactly. Well, I have so many things I want to, continue to go in this conversation. And also, I want my community to watch it. And so, I just appreciate you all so much. Are there any last things that you would like to share? Or there was one thing that you said, Erika, that I don't know if this is, veering into, so, okay. If this is veering into a place that we shouldn't go, then we'll just cut it off before. But you said you started in college in this profession. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? Is that appropriate for me to ask?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I started out, and I mean, my parents set me up for absolute success. They helped me through college in all sorts of different ways, but I do have to admit, I'm more of a spender myself. So coming to terms with that, having a whole bunch of growth. I mean, Joe knew me when I was an intern. So it's funny because when we started talking about doing more of a teaming, it was just so funny because he was like, I've seen you kind of grow up in the system.
Yes.
And I'm now 26, almost 27. So being able to look back and say, hey, this was maybe not necessarily something that was, the best piece. Credit cards, that was something that I struggled with when I was super young. And if I could go back in time and throw a shoe at my head every time I was about to swipe the credit card on something I didn't need, I absolutely would. But I mean, I think that even that provides some level of wisdom. I mean, I have to give out a shout out to my little sister. She's not actually in finance or anything yet, but she's at the University of Tampa, very much using other people's money to go there. And the biggest thing that I've told her is if you have somebody who has questions, just don't hesitate to connect us, because I can help them figure out what they should be doing. I can give a little bit more of that coaching advice. There's going to be a better, perspective potentially, just because I have made some of the mistakes. But, growing up and being able to say, hey, like, this is where you can do things and this is where you need to maybe improve. Again, it's not, I always tell people there's no dumb questions when they're talking with us. And this is not a place of judgment, because Joe and I have heard it all at this point. So the biggest thing that I'll tell people is just, being able to actually have that. I did grow up a lot within just Northwestern Mutual and everything else, and realizing, hey, like, even though I was 21 when I first started, being able to see a little bit more of what that effect had, just through being able to meet with people and understand more about their own struggles and be able to coach them and, model that after myself. A lot of us have said you're going to be your best client. Like,
Yes.
You need to be your own best client. You need to be the person who can walk the walk, talk the talk. So when I finally started to make some of those realizations, that was where I was like, okay, like this is going to be a better career for me than I think I even realized when I first got into it. So
yes,
yeah,
love it. Love it.
Well,
Love it. Love it.
Dr.
ahead,
Oz,
Joe.
the one thing I'll share kind of in wrapping up is something that we talked about in our first meeting. And I think there's, at least in the way that I grew up in a very blue collar household, there's a stigma to financial planning. There's a stigma to having a financial advisor. There's, so many radio ads. If you have, 3/4, actually, it's the same firm in Milwaukee that on the radio 5 years ago, they said, if you have 250,000 or more, call us. Now they're up to 750 or more. You can call us.
Yeah.
But there's so much of that messaging that's out there that, I think part of my mission has been over the last 11 years is we have resources in our system, from college interns who are young that grow with their clients to where I am, to clients, who are retiring. Like, we have the resources to talk to everybody, and we want to talk to everybody at where they are at their stage in life, not wait until suddenly they have this magical number to have the conversation. So just
because that was not on this list, I didn't ask that. I'm so glad that you worked it in, because I really wanted to make that really, really apparent. Thank you, both of you. But thank you for really making that point. And one of the things too is I hear students talking about, families talking about financial planning, debt-free degree, whatever it is. It's going to be this massive like gash, and it's going to be so incredibly painful. And I hope that each one of you, when you're watching this video, you understand it is a kind, loving, benevolent, very beneficial kind of conversation. And so it's not, we're going to take away your Starbucks. It's, we're going to reimagine Starbucks. And so there may be a time that, yes, you get Starbucks, but maybe spending $15 a day at Starbucks is something that we could perhaps reallocate that money somewhere differently, that you may want something more long-term. So it's like tiny tweaks. And that's what debt-free degree is all about. So yes, there's the scholarship piece, but there are all these things like, okay, so you want a degree from X university. And if you want that diploma on your wall, do you understand that you can start at a community college, transfer all those credits in, and you still get that diploma that says that name? And nobody is ever going to ask you, I want to see your transcript and make sure that you did not take one class that was not at this school. It just comes down to what is it that you want? And it's a bit of semantics. Erika introduced me to her dad, and here in Georgia, the technical schools are called technical colleges. So semantics wise, if you want to be a financial planner, or you want to be a physician, or you want to be a plumber, you go to college to do that. That's critical, because words matter. You all are so great with your words and so great with the way that you've explained it. So are there any last few things that Joe or Erika that y'all would like to share with our community before we close this for today?
I would put it out there that also there's been something in the last few years that I do think has been a positive for society. It's people embracing who they are, their uniquenesses, their individuality. And I think the earlier somebody can be comfortable with that and their goals, whether it's tech school, university, whether it's the trades, I think it's really hard sometimes to live in shadows of like,
Mm.
oh, parents went to this school, this is where you have to go, or you know, other people want something more than actually what you want. Now, granted, if you're, 10 years old, like my daughter, she still needs some guidance on where she wants to go and has no clue where she wants to be. But my point is, just because you see somebody else do something or somebody else wants something for you, still, kind of double check that and say, is that really what I want?
Yes.
Before you through or get that, I'm not going to name a name in this particular instance, but I know somebody who has 3 different degrees only to go back to the very first degree after he realized the second 2 weren't actually something he enjoyed.
Yes.
And you think about all that cost and all that time to go through that, where the fulfillment was right there the first time. And
Yes.
there was a lot of stress and pressure from others around him to continue, and he really didn't have to. He could have saved all of that.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And actually, I love what Joe just said. And I just read an article the other day because my mom sent it to me. But she was saying, hey, she said, I think this would be super relevant. My boyfriend has 2 kids, but that was one of the pieces where, the biggest theme of the article was think about who you were when you were 10. Like what was your passion at that point? What was your driving factor? Like who were you at 10? Because, you still have the innocence that, you can do anything. So, think about your hopes and your goals and your dreams at that point, just to say, hey, is this something that I really want to pursue? I mean, I can say from the business degree perspective, I went for marketing and management. I ended up in finance, but, there were so many people who went to school and they're like, I don't have a declared major just because I feel like this is what I should be doing.
Mm.
So I think there's I feel like there's, a good way to make sure that you are truly, pursuing what you want. Because I've had a handful of friends go back to school as well. So making sure that that passion is in alignment with who you truly are. Granted, not all of us are going to be, who we wanted to be when we were 10, because I'm sure a lot of us would say that was Spider-Man or, princess, like one of the princesses, something like that. But the big thing that, really resonated was make sure that you are pursuing what you want before you go and incur a whole bunch of other people's money or debt or anything else. Just because it is something that not everybody has to go to school. Like that's another piece that you don't have to go to school. So that's something that Joe and I plan for too, is, hey, if, little Johnny doesn't go to school, how do we make sure that he can still utilize some of this money, versus having, very stringent requirements around, hey, like, this is what it has to be used for at this stage in life, whatever that looks like. So again, kind of, long-winded on that answer, but that would be like, who were you when you were 10? Like, what do you actually want to pursue?
Yes. And for me, when I think back, who was I at 10? I wanted to be a teacher. And so I did that. And in many ways, Joe, back to what you were talking about, your friend that has the 3 degrees, my master's was definitely tied to the job that I was doing at the time and opened up doors for other jobs. So the master's was absolutely quite beneficial. The PhD, I'm glad I did it. It did not open the doors that I thought it would. And I am DrRoz because of it. And that's what my students called me. But it's not if I had not done it debt free, I would have a lot of regret, because I did use OPM, because I did get my PhD completely debt free. Then I am delighted to have spent the sweat equity to put into it. But if I still owed money on it, I would be pretty salty about it, honestly. So, for a different conversation on a different day, Erika's dad, hopefully will be joining us, and he's going to talk about a different aspect of that. As far as, what is the economic outlook for folks, certainly folks with the job outlook for people with a PhD, it's tiny. And yet so many people are like, get more education, you can write your own ticket. And that's just not true anymore. Yeah. No. Well, you two are a delight. and a pleasure. And I am so grateful for you. And Patreon beloveds, I am so grateful every single time you tune into one of our Pontification with a Pro. And we've been here with Joe and Erika of Northwestern, and I just am so grateful. And so in deepest gratitude, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the joy that you put out there, and y'all are amazing.
And you as well, Dr. Oz.
Yes.
Your platform, your channel, your impact on future, generations. I mean, it starts, the area that you're servicing is key for financial freedom and success in the future. So keep doing what you're doing too.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all. Join us next time. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.